Greetings, friends. My name is Jessa McLean, and I'm here to provide you with some blueprints of disruption. This weekly podcast is dedicated to amplifying the work of activists, examining power structures, and sharing the success stories from the grassroots. Through these discussions, we hope to provide folks with the tools and the inspiration they need to start to dismantle capitalism, decolonize our spaces, and bring about the political revolution we know we need. Greetings. This episode of Blueprints features a discussion with community activists Tigra-Lee and Des. They share what it's like advocating for anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous racism in rural Alberta and Saskatchewan. These two amazing women have persevered and created something very special in their community. Let's listen. So, good morning. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Yay. So I hate introducing people and not doing it right, so I'm going to leave that up to you two wonderful people. But Des, I asked you on the podcast, thank you for agreeing, because of the work you do in Alberta. I have no idea what it's like being an activist in Alberta. I'm from Ontario. So I'll ask you a bit about that later. But the first thing you said was, I want to bring Tigra-Lee on with me. Let me see when she's available. Why? Why was it so important she come with you today?
So I'll start off telling you how I met Tigra, because it is like such a fun little story. She's been an activist in our community for a while, and she was putting on some events, especially during like the summer of 2021, for things like Every Child Matters and for solidarity with missing and murdered Indigenous women, and solidarity with like the family in London who was shot or ran over as well. And so I was attending these events, and at that time I knew I was running for the NDP, and I was like, I need to connect with like leftists here because everybody around us is conservative. And so I went up and met Tigra, and I introduced myself to her, and I was like, hey, like we should have a conversation later and start doing some activist stuff together. And it was kind of awkward until we had a Zoom meeting where sorry, I got to tell, this is so funny. I was thinking about this last night, Tigra. We had a Zoom meeting where we were talking about doing different kinds of things in our community. And Tigra kind of was super awkward. And she's like, yeah, so I just need to let you know, like, I don't know how you feel about police or anything. And I was like, oh, I'm an abolitionist. Absolutely. And so since then, we've been like so tight together.
She was testing the waters.
She was, yeah. She's like, I don't know, like this girl is like whiter than white bread. Like, I don't know how she's going to feel when I talk about police, but we had this really great vibe. And I love her so much. She is such an important part of our community. Tigra does so many amazing things for the unhoused people of our community, for people who, just don't have access to anything, or people who are down on their luck. Tigra is there consistently and doing everything that she can. And I feel sometimes that my work doesn't translate in the same way that hers does. And because she's so important to our community, and because the work she does is just so, like, it inspires me and it's so critical to me, I can't help but show her off. I have to bring her along and be like, look at Tigra. Look at Tigra. She's amazing. And she proves it every single time I get to chat with her. And she's just so helpful to me and such an important part of my activism and my journey that I could not bring her with me.
I mean, your energy level just kind of ups that extra ante when you start talking. I hope you guys feed off of each other in that way, because we all need comrades like that.
Des is like the best type woman. Like, I bring you with me everywhere. Can you introduce me always?
Yes.
Tigra-Lee ever runs for office, I mean, you need to be at every door ahead of her, right?
Yep.
Seriously. Yeah, 100%.
Tigra, we've heard why Des loves you so much, but you want to give us like a bit of a more of an official introduction of who you are?
Sure.
What you do?
Yeah. Okay. So, like Des said, and you said, my name is Tigra-Lee. I am an activist here in Lloydminster, and I'm co-founder of a group called Lloydminster and Vermillion for Equity Foundation. We are a registered nonprofit that officially got nonprofit status last November. We operated for about a year before we had our nonprofit status, so that was really exciting. We originally formed after the death of George Floyd. So we had a protest, and by we, I mean like myself and my other group members. There's 3 other core group members right now. And we had a protest in Vermillion, and we knew that we had to keep the conversation going. And so we decided to have weekly roundtable meetings, and invite the community out of Vermillion. And then we switched it to having one in Vermillion and one in Lloydminster, and just kind of switching off weeks. And yeah, there were a lot of weeks where nobody came out. And there were a lot of our events where we had a lot of backlash. Like Des said, we live in a very conservative area. And it was difficult to get off the ground, but so far we have really started to impact our community by supporting and amplifying the voices of the unhoused and just marginalized community here in Lloyd. So that's where my passion is: social justice, mutual aid, anti-racism, building diverse and equitable spaces. That's really where my passion is. I am also an entrepreneur and a mom of 3. I also work full time, so there's a lot going on at all times. So, but it is rewarding. It's thankless, but it's rewarding. So yeah, it's a bit about me.
Well, I thank you for doing that work. And I don't know how you do it. Quite often I ask guests, like, if there were 1,000 yous, what would you want them all doing? I feel like there might be 1,000 you.
Like, literally. I'd fight them all. Who? No.
Is that just too much Tigra?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, that's too much Tigra.
I personally want 1,000 Tigras, but
there's your fan club chipping in it. So you talked about forming a large bulk of this in the wake of George Floyd's murder. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of communities saw action.
Yeah.
In the weeks, in the months, even small towns, here where I'm in rural Ontario. So I do kind of live in a similar, I think, level of community when it comes to tolerance and levels of racism. So it was nice that we did have, we were able to have some action here. But I think having something sustained following it is what others struggled to do. Why do you think, and then I know some of your meetings, you say like maybe nobody's there and it's not always a measurable success, right? But what do you think you did that allowed you to kind of sustain and build on that and create the equity foundation for Lloyd and Vermillion?
Yeah, so it was disheartening at first because, especially with my type of personality, like, you want to be good at everything and be as direct and hard-hitting as possible and reach as many people as possible. But when you're dealing with communities that are so established, many have the same like founding families that settled here, right? And it's hard to change viewpoints, especially when you're coming in with something new. So to stay positive and really remember that what you're building is trust. You're building trust with other community members. You're building trust with the vulnerable community as well. Many people that have been silenced for so long, they don't feel the need to reach out for support, or they don't feel like society really has their back. It really takes time. So that was what really pushed me forward. There, I had, group members that were like, what's the point of this, Tigra? Like, we're not moving forward. Nobody's coming out. We're not reaching anybody. And then it took probably about a solid year for people and like our community members to really realize and come to terms with, we're not calling our entire town racist. We're not calling every single person racist. We're really just trying to address serious issues that impacts all of the world, really, not just our own community. And, because it's not so it's not so overt, people, unless you're a white supremacy guy or white power guy out in Vermillion. It is more covert here, and I feel like that's harder to navigate. But I just really tried to stay positive, persevere, pull from the supports that I have created over the past couple of years here, and really push forward. And when we started to get a lot of backlash really from the communities of Lloyd and Vermillion, somebody said something to me that really hit home, and they said to me, this is the response that you're looking for. If you weren't getting this response, then there wouldn't be an issue. You wouldn't be impacting people like you are right now. So I really took that, and I really kept that close to me. So when times did get tough, when we were getting death threats and people were coming to our events to just disrupt, I really held on to that. And, at the end of the day, really come home and debrief and, okay, it was hard, but you got through it, and tomorrow's another day.
That's a theme I've definitely heard from a lot of activists. Not that you're not sharing something new, but just that it's just so critical to build trust in the community first, right? Before you kind of do that work. And Des spoke earlier. I think you do something, Tigra, that you didn't mention, but I believe kind of act like a beacon also for progressives and people looking to join in these fights. Des mentioned, and maybe you can talk to that experience moving to Alberta and trying to find other progressives to work alongside. I know, Des, you ran for the NDP, so I guess that allowed people to kind of probably come to you and understand that there was another a socialist in town. But do you feel Tigra does that? And is that work important? Is it hard to find allies in Alberta?
It's really interesting because I've been around a lot of Lakeland as a riding and through a lot of northern Alberta. I'm pretty well traveled through the province. And I've met all sorts of different people, and especially during the election, like talking about different kinds of issues. I find that people aren't really that afraid of leftist policies or leftist ideas. They just don't understand most of the time. And especially in small rural communities where it's predominantly white, they just don't have a lot of exposure to other people and to other ways of being, other communities, other ideologies. And so it tends to be like when you start talking to certain people about anything progressive, you can usually get them on a couple of, things like, I agree that like we should have that. We should have this. But it's really like, I would say it's harder to find somebody who has all of the same ideas or more left ideas. I find people are really in that centrist camp, or like no political home, but they have ideas and they have an idea that they want society to be. They just don't know how to get there. Honestly, if anything, I think I've had an easier experience finding progressives in the community, mostly because I am quite white compared to Tigra. Like Tigra's experience going door to door during the election, getting signatures from me was such a different experience to me going alone and going door to door. And the experience that she and I had together going door to door together was different than my alone experience and her alone experience. And so I think, honestly, it's almost easier for me to find other people in my camp because I have that whiteness that really protects me in a way that not a lot of people who are in this line of work tend to have. And it's a barrier, I think, in Alberta and in Saskatchewan that really has to be broken down by people like me who are educated and who have that privilege and who can enter those spaces and start breaking down those walls. But I find it easier just because I can kind of hide my marginalized identities, really, which isn't a good thing by any means. But it is unfortunately a reality in Alberta.
Do you find a lot of the comments that we've had earlier too was in our circles, even in our progressive circles, there's a lot of decolonizing to do within those circles. So you may find other progressives, but there's still work to do there, right? Forget about the broader community. Do you find that the same, Tigra? Do you feel like you do a lot of heavy lifting as an activist to kind of make sure you're surrounded by folks that are, they understand? I know the way you kind of tested Des and my, you're not going to be bringing cops to the rally, right? We don't get permits.
Yeah, it's true. Like, so when I first met Des, she was running for NDP, and I don't know, Des, you kind of touched on it where, I don't really fit anywhere politically, I feel. And if like at that time, if I was to vote, it would have been NDP. If I was to vote, or Green Party. And just hearing the amount of ridiculousness that the Green Party was going through at the time. And I had a couple friends actually that were a part of that whole hotness. Like, I don't even want to touch on that. It was ridiculous. But so when I met Des and and she's like, yeah, I'm going to run for NDP. And then I made that comment, like, I don't really know if, like, we're going to 100% align because I'm very anti-cop. And she's like, oh, we're abolitionists here. I'm like, girl, sis, we are best friends now. And because it is hard. You find progressives or you find other socialists or leftists that have some of the same viewpoints and ideologies, but when you say defund or abolish, they just get all squirrely. So yeah, so it's though there's certain topics that you can't, you kind of do have to test them. Like, I'm going to say this and I'm going to judge you based on this response. So but once you get into activism, you find many like-minded people. It's just how like-minded they are. But there is like anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism is so prevalent. No matter what circle you're in, there's so much unlearning to do. White supremacy runs so rampant. Nobody's impervious to it. The decolonization that you touched on 100% does need to happen. And outside of doing this work in the community, you're up against other outside community members that truly don't understand your purpose and understand your mission. But we have to deal with lateral violence within the socialist and leftist communities as well, whether that be stereotypes, racism, lateral violence, anti-queerness, and just like various different things. So support is really what you need. Yeah, I found a lot of like-minded people, but you have to build barriers still, regardless of how much you relate to that one person, just to keep yourself safe, because once you start to burn out, it's so hard to get back on the right track. And Des and I have been there multiple times together within the past couple of years here. But I feel very, very comfortable with her, because there's not many people too that you can say that to, like, hey, I'm burnt out so many times. Like, we've made plans and, we're on the same level where it's like, we have plans, but I'll cancel or she cancels. And can't speak for you, Des, but sometimes I'm like, yes, I just need it today.
Oh my goodness.
The worst thing about being an activist is just how absolutely exhausting being alive gets after a while, especially just as we watch capitalism failing more and more every day. I think it just takes so much out of us, and it's really important to find people who you can cancel plans with. And I'm so glad I have you. I love you so much, Tigra.
I love you so much too. It's true though. Yeah. To have people that you can just be your 100% authentic self. And I think that's a lot of the learning too that I've learned in the last the last few years here is how the amount of unlearning that every single one of us has to do. That in itself is exhausting as well.
That kind of inner work. But I mean, that burnout is real, and it's so nice that you can lean on each other. I can attest, yeah, there's always a few close comrades where they just know. There's no explanation needed. I'm bailing. But, think about, before we started recording, how many, and even then what Des and you have listed, how many issues just you are fighting or have advocated for. You're talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women, housing advocacy, anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, the harms of the residential schools and unpacking that, plus the pressures of capitalism that you're fighting and being bombarded with daily. Kudos to you for being able to sustain that work for so long, for operating without your nonprofit status and just that push through. I mean, not everybody can do that, especially during these circumstances. The pandemic has sucked a lot of energy out of a lot of us. So, be so proud of that work that you're doing. And let's talk a little more about the work specifically. You talked about amplifying the voices of the unhoused and other members of your community that are otherwise marginalized. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? You don't grab a megaphone. How do we amplify those voices while remaining respectful of their situation?
Sometimes I do grab a megaphone.
She does have a megaphone. She totally does.
I got my husband bought me a brand new megaphone.
Oh, that's love.
Yeah, 100. I was so excited. I started marching throughout my house. Black Lives Matter. And my dog started howling. I was like, this is perfect.
Oh, I love your dog. Such a good ally.
Right? She's so great. We do a mutual aid outreach once a week called LVE Street Team. My good friend Claire, I'll give her a shout out, Claire. She is a co-founder of Water Warriors YEG in Edmonton, and I got the opportunity to meet her at a few protests and counter protests, and her energy and spirit was just awesome. And they had a little sidecar of Water Warriors called Water Wings in the not last summer but the summer before, when we had a really hot heat wave. And so to my other co-founder, his name's Brad, I was like, hey, we should go around with water. Like, people aren't able to get inside. They're not, I know that our men's shelter and our drop-in center, they were only operating at like a third capacity or half capacity. And they weren't able to just water, just to get water. It was super hot outside. So we put a call out for some rollable coolers, and we filled it with ice and water, and we went out and we just started giving out water. And then we started bringing snacks. So we started water and snacks, and we're like, well, you know what, we need sandwiches. So we started water, snacks, and sandwiches. And we got donated a collapsible wagon. And so obviously we had to stuff as much stuff in there as we could to bring out. So we got socks, toothbrushes, toothpaste, like hygiene products, feminine care products, just put as much stuff in this wagon as we possibly could.
Are these all donations? Like, how do you?
Yeah. Well, they were donations, but a lot of it came out of our own pockets as well. Like much of it came out of our own pockets. But that also ties back into building trust. Like, we would put out calls on like our community Facebook pages for different products and stuff. But until we became a little bit more established in the community, and people could see what their donations were going towards, it took a bit of time to start getting monetary donations in, which we have a bit now, so that's good. It really helps out, but a lot of it still does come out of our own pockets. So this was we worked right into the winter. And outside, we were just outside at City Hall, and then we got clothing donations. So every weekend we went out to City Hall, set up 2 tables. We would have our bagged lunches, our clothing donation items, and then we just have them out. So the unhoused community members, many we see the same people mostly every week. There are some new people that we get to see. So they knew we would show up to City Hall and they would be there waiting for us. And now during the cold months, my good friend Tyler, he runs Residents in Recovery, and which is our recovery center here in Lloyd. So I asked if we could use his space to set up during the winter time. And he said, yes. So now we're in there every Sunday, which is nice because with COVID, there wasn't many spaces. The drop-in center had closed actually. So there weren't many spaces for them to go and be warm, take a rest, just sit down, have something warm to eat in their belly, and a good conversation as well. Good conversation, have somebody that's there that's going to listen to them. I was a part of that community, the unhoused community in Edmonton before I moved to Lloydminster. And I was in active addiction for 10 years when I moved here, and I got clean and sober. So a lot of what I tried to do is out of experience, from my own experience, and what I appreciated, and what I would have liked to see. But also the work we do is 100% with the unhoused and the vulnerable community members in the forefront. They tell us what they need. They tell us what they would appreciate. They tell us what's happening to them within the community, so that we are able to advocate for them, whether that be housing, whether that be harm reduction, whether that be like any other like social issues. We can try, since we're so new, we don't have too much capacity, but we do try and do what we can.
One kind of theme I'm picking up as you're talking is asking. So you make really bold asks of your allies, of the community, right, to enable what you do, but you also ask the people you're working with. That's a lot of listening, right? A lot of activism sometimes doesn't include that. I mean, good activism does, but quite often, especially in political spaces, we get talked at a lot. Des, is this, this is not a typical political approach, the listening, right, from our experiences within the NDP. Do you feel like these are more productive spaces for you than going door to door as a political candidate?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think especially now last year, I think we were in a completely different state in terms of social and political relations amongst everybody. It's become so much more polarized, so much faster than any of us really thought it could in just a short year. We're not even a full year out from the election, and the political ideas that were around in September have escalated so much. And so I honestly, for myself now, I don't know if I can even operate in politics because it's just very obviously not working. And it hasn't been working. But what Tigra does and what Tigra is passionate about and what she gives to our community, that's what works. And it works for the people of our community. It works for, the way that our community, really Lloydminster and Vermillion, we're really tight communities. We're small communities. And there's already that you know how it is in rural. Everybody's kind of friends with each other, but only if you're, look, we're the same color. We're going to be friends. If you're a foreigner, parentheses, I'm not going to be as nice to you because I'm a rural person. But Tigra's work changes that. That changes that atmosphere. That creates that inclusion. It creates that basis for equity. And politics can't. just straight up, it can't, because it doesn't listen. It doesn't take real democracy into consideration on how an entire community feels. It doesn't take the time to familiarize itself with the community in the way that politics, realistically, we would expect it to, being a service that serves the people, right? And that's just why I just love what LVE does so much and what Tigra does, because like Tigra took exactly what needed to be done in our community and just started freaking doing it. And like, nobody can really say that. And, you know, I can't even say that. And I feel like so inspired and just so incredibly energized by the work that she does. Genuinely, like, I think Tigra does more than any politician could ever do for our community, just by being her and having the heart that she does and knowing to ask the right questions.
I'm thinking back to your answer, and Tigra's kind of sus of you as an NDP candidate. It wasn't actually this beacon of hope, right? It wasn't like, oh, she must be cool, she's NDP, right? She's progressive. It was like, all right, you seem a little establishment. But I feel that is the case now. You know, I'm also a former candidate, but now I look at candidates with a little bit of, you know, because of these ideas that you're talking, Des, that are shooting up. You're not talking about leftist ideas. We don't really see them kind of exploding in the way that we need them. I'm assuming you're talking about the rise of the right and in this polarization, because we've not really seen, well, we have, right? The good people like Tigra-Lee aren't really all that involved with electoral politics. A lot of people aren't, right? The most marginalized are not, because it doesn't speak to them, right? The communities that you're helping probably don't vote all that much, right? And so when we continue to talk at voters, we're missing this huge picture that you're engaging with mutual aid and all of these other activities. So like Tigra-Lee, like in the work that you do, we know how you make immediate impacts on your community members, right? By listening to them and creating spaces and food, right? Like that is so obvious a need, and housing. But how does your work help the broader picture? Are we changing the messaging? Are you pressuring politicians? What else does that work do?
I really think it's just leading by example. Over the past year, you know, leftists, like socialists, communists, they're all kind of like buzzwords now. And to be honest, like, I don't subscribe to any of it. I do not subscribe to being a leftist, a centrist, right wing, because I don't have faith in our governments. And I don't even understand what that means. You know what I mean? Like, and I say this all the time because I truly, like, to see a community member out there and you're not trying to provide some support, or you know that there's an issue within the community, but you're criminalizing it, doesn't make sense to me. I honestly cannot understand it. So it's just like the ideologies on both sides I don't subscribe to. And like I said, like, really just try to lead by example. You know, when social media is a great tool, I do think that it has its good and its bad to it. But we put pictures out and we put posts out and we'll put them in the community groups for accountability. One, because we do get a lot of donations, monetary and item donations from the community. So one, for accountability, but two, you know, we did start this from the ground up. It took a lot of work, but it was doable. So if we can do it, somebody else can do it as well. Our mayor here in Lloyd, we have some sort of an understanding. We've gone and protested outside of the RCMP building, outside of City Hall many times. I've personally had many conversations with our mayor. We've written letters, you know, and we've put pressure on the governments, but
any results?
No, there's no results. For like, when we had the Wet'suwet'en protest, we stood in solidarity with Wet'suwet'en, and we wrote a letter to our MLA, Garth, and the response we got, I wish I could find it, because if I would send it to you, it's probably in another email, but it was awful. It was heinous. It was just like, well, pretty much they're getting what they deserve, and the Chiefs already agreed to it, so what they're doing is futile. And he's also
he's a climate change denialist completely.
Yes.
He does not believe in climate change. He does not believe that there is a climate emergency. And
it's a hoax to him.
Wow. And anything scientific, I assume, is a hoax to the
Garth is an idiot
government.
Right? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
They're just straight up Christo-fascists, to be honest.
Yes.
I love Christianity. I am a self-described Christian, but man, the last couple of years, Christianity been whack. Christianity gotten super whack.
I don't know. I think they have a history of whackness, to be honest. But
this is my thing. I know lots about Christianity. It's a whole thing. I'm a strong believer that Christianity peaked when it was a sect of Judaism. It should never have separated from that. That's when it was peaking. But we're here now, unfortunately.
Des's hot take. We'll have to do a whole new episode on.
If you want to get a hot takes on Christianity, I was an evangelical Christian for 10 years. I got hot takes.
Yes. We also, I also grew up in the church as well, Pentecostal, and part Pentecostal, part cult. So there's we could do a whole other podcast.
I was going to say, now it'll just be the two of you on again.
Yeah. Well, we'll go through all the cults that are in Lloyd, because there's at least 5.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Some say the NDP's a leadership cult, right? There's cults everywhere.
Yep.
Let's not judge. Let's go back to the work that you're doing again. We'll circle back. What, kind of is the biggest barrier? I know, you've talked about maybe spinning your wheels with politicians and it going nowhere. Let's imagine we just forget about those folks. Other than our useless representation, what's your biggest barrier as an activist? Is that external? Maybe it's internal.
That's a really good question. My biggest barrier right now is finding appropriate social services to direct people. One of our missions and part of our mission and vision is to be a conduit. So people will come to us, we listen to them, and then we direct them in different areas of special areas, specialty areas, specialty people, whether that's, income support, some social services, education, therapy, addiction services. But when we talk about decolonization and we talk about defunding and, and uplifting other social areas, those areas all need to be decolonized as well. So child social services 100% needs to be decolonized. Education 100% needs to be decolonized. But instead of putting the work into these areas, when the government needs money, they defund all of those areas. They don't put any work into them. And somehow all of this money goes to the RCMP. That's the number one area right now that I'm having difficulty with is finding safe spaces, because you don't want to perpetuate harm. You don't want to tell them to, okay, well, you visit this service, when more often than not, that's the only option that we have. So that's what we have to do in order to get them some sort of support, because I can't 100% say that all of the support that they'll get in that area is negative. So any positivity that would come out of that is beneficial, because we don't have any other options. So that in itself is the biggest barrier that we're seeing right now.
Kind of reminds me of, when someone is in crisis and you don't want the police, but you don't know who else to call. So it's not a matter of, you just don't know what service is available, is that some of those services will actually do more harm.
That is the only thing we can do here in Lloyd, is call RCMP. When you have any sort of crisis at all, the only thing you can do is call the RCMP. And it's a hard decision. You don't know if you are going to call them, and then more often than not, they are judged immediately upon arrival before that person is in social crisis or is in some sort of crisis, is in needing mental health support. They're a drunk Indigenous person. That is first and foremost what is seen. So you don't know if they are going to be victims of police brutality. You don't know if they're going to be taken seriously. You don't know if they're actually they need life-saving help, but they're going to go to the hospital and not receive that. And which has happened quite a few times here and in other surrounding areas where people have gone multiple times to the hospital there. One person ended up taking his own life in a bathroom because he had gone multiple times and was not supported. There are multiple stories. I have heard so many stories out of the hospital here of people enduring racism.
Yeah, I'll just interject even my own experience, not me personally, but my brother was in crisis in the hospital here in Lloyd, and he's an Indigenous man. He looks quite Indigenous compared to me, and he's a big guy. He's built like a refrigerator. He was in a mental health crisis, and the nurse called the cops on him because he was sitting behind a toilet crying because he didn't want her to take his temperature. And she said, "Oh, he's going to hurt me. He's going to kill me," and called 2 police officers who showed up with guns and tasers. And my brother was 17 years old, and he's terrified out of his mind. And the only thing that they saw was a big, scary Native guy who is uncontrollable to them. And the first thing they did was call the police. And it's just, that's how it is here. And it's really frustrating because it's literally inescapable.
And that's something similar, well, not similar, but I've also had my own experience there after I had my youngest daughter. She, newborn babies, they kind of get a newborn rash. Sometimes some are worse than others. And she had quite a substantial newborn rash, and her startle reflex, she got startled very easily. And I noticed it. So I asked the nurse about it. I was like, "Hey, what's up? What's going on with this?" And the pediatrician literally asked me if I was doing drugs. And they asked me multiple times, do you do drugs? Are you doing drugs? Are you sure you didn't do any drugs? This is my 3rd baby. I'm sure I did not do any drugs. If I was concerned about that, I would have relayed that to you. And because of the rash, I got asked if I had herpes. And, as not a new mom, but I just gave birth, and and being COVID tested right after you give birth, plus all of those questions on top of it, not being able to have the support that I would have had with my other 2 children as well. I was alone. My husband, I had 2 other kids at home, and because he couldn't leave and come back, I opted to stay by myself because I didn't have any other choice. So it was, and that's just our stories I've heard so many stories out of this hospital. Can't remember what the question was. Sorry, that was kind of a really random tangent.
Let me come back with another question then, kind of based on what you said, because one of the struggles that I face in my progressive circles, when we try to talk about defunding the RCMP, there was a resolution, and, I brought it to my riding association, and socialist progressives, from anti-Black racist advocates, and a lot of resistance to defunding the RCMP. And one of the major sticking points that I obviously couldn't speak from experience, but you two can, was, we've got a lot of these rural towns, cities, that only have the RCMP, and what would they do? Should there not be, obviously it's a gradual defunding and a building up of community services, it's not, but that was the resistance that it faced, that it was towns like yours that absolutely needed the RCMP to solve all of your problems. So what would you say to those folks that just can't see another way for towns like Lloyd?
Des, you should answer this one. I know you have a phenomenal response to this.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because Tigra and I had this conversation a little while ago too, where we talked about the fact that Lloyd needs to have the RCMP for crisis response, and it's because we genuinely have no other services. And as you go throughout Alberta, especially rural northern Alberta, it's the same thing where, some places they don't even have like an actual RCMP detachment. They have like a building that officers from a different community show up at in the morning, and they go there and they work there for the day, because there's no municipality funds or anything. So they just have a tiny little building that they operate out of. And it's a huge problem. But it was made to be like that. The system was set up to be like this so that they're the only things that we have access to. That comes from colonization. That comes from how this country fundamentally was set up and how systemically they needed to, control the natives and all of this bull crap that we know that the RCMP was funded on and created on. From what I have learned, it is that gradual change, that gradual bringing over of community services. I think in a lot of communities out rural, especially in Alberta, I could see something where if Lloydminster, for example, was set up with like a community response, we would have to take the onus at first and extend that out, right? Like Lloydminster having a community-based response, we would extend that to places like Kitscotty, which is only like 15 minutes outside of Lloyd, or Marwayne, which is about 30 minutes, or Vermillion or whatever areas. I think that it would be really difficult, honestly, to make that change. And I think it would be an effort that would have to come from the entire community being ready to make that change. And honestly, I don't think it would even be successful unless we were able to meaningfully address the problems that cause the RCMP to be needed. So things like we have safe drug supply for people who need to access it, and we have a place where they can go to use those drugs safely and have medical response. We do things like providing housing for everybody in that community so that people don't have to, sleep in alleys and have the cops called on them, or break into a place and have the cops called on them. It's unfortunate that, like, in order to really start the process of fixing these things, that we have to start by fixing the problems to make it so that we don't even need the police in the first place. But that's kind of the beautiful thing that, like, a group like LVE can do, especially as it gets larger, like creating that space to be like, hey, don't call them, call us. I think would be really the best way to start that, is having those groups of people where, somebody's trained to respond to any kind of mental health situations. I know here in Lloyd, they do provide mental health training. I don't know how much it costs. I'm going to actually look into it later, though. But I know you can get these
$200.
Ew, $200?
It's $250.
Gross. Capitalism sucks.
Seriously, I know. It got offered to us, which I thought was really awesome. But then I kept thinking, I'm like, the unhoused should have this knowledge. They should have this training so they can support themselves. But for $200, I can't even afford that.
No, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Well, I'm gonna get the course. I'm gonna learn it, and then I'll teach it to everybody for free. That's what we'll do. Yes. Well, Pirate Bay crash courses. But yeah, like that's what you have to do, is create those community systems and have that number that to call that person or this group, and they're gonna come, and have the people who are reliable for it. So yeah, I think that's where we need to start looking. It's the reality is, I think, that we need to consider over the next 8 years, as we're looking to a future where we're going to have more polarized politics, especially on the far right, as we see Pierre Poilievre, whatever his name is, Père Poutine, getting all his like these big rallies and mega types things. Like, we're going to see more of this. We're going to see more climate disasters. We're going to see more people being unhoused and more people living and falling into that poverty line. We're just going to have to pick up the responsibility together and, you know, arm in arm say, no, you know what? This isn't acceptable. None of us have to live like this. None of us have to adhere to these ideas that society's telling us that we need to live by. We're eventually going to, as individuals and as a community and as community groups, we're just going to have to taking that responsibility and just ask for forgiveness later. You know, we know this person needs to get housed today. We're going to find them a house today. We'll ask for forgiveness later. That's what we're going to eventually be falling into, I think. And I think that we should be open and willing and ready to have the conversations on what that looks like and how we build up to that point. Because if we don't have those conversations now, by the time that we need to have those systems in place, it's going to be way more difficult than any of us would like. And I think a lot of people will fall through the cracks.
Like, I'm hopeful that this model that you have is, can act as an example, like you said, like leading by example for others to follow. And if you can demonstrate a different way of operating community, which is really municipal, right? Ideally, you folks shouldn't have to do this, right? This is what you pay your taxes for so that we can take care of each other and not corporations, right? So I'm going to challenge you a little bit here in the same way folks challenge food banks. If we take that onus on ourselves, the entire onus of feeding our community members, have we not left a lot of people off the hook? And not that that's your work, like, we got to feed people. We have to house people right now, right? We can't wait for like transformative politics to happen. But how do we start to make that shift where it's understood that that shouldn't be Des's responsibility? It should not be Tigra-Lee's and her friends' responsibilities to feed the community of Lloyd. Right? Like, you do have a mayor, you do pay taxes. There is a provincial government. There is a federal government with certain responsibilities. I know we don't trust them, but it is still their job. Like, so I worry that if we structure ourselves like this, where the onus is put on people who are already struggling and burning out as we do, that is not sustainable.
Our government's not sustainable.
Yeah, it isn't.
Our government's not sustainable, though. And the thing is, especially when you have a nonprofit and you are doing mutual aid, you have to be super mindful not to fall into the nonprofit industrial complex. And you have to be mindful about not falling into this white-centered charity idea where you are going to come in and save everybody. We're not saving people. We're supporting our community. And we are showing other community members that they are also capable of supporting as well. Especially when it comes to food. Doesn't I have plans? We have plans for this summer. And yeah, it's just where I'm super excited because we are going to be growing food. We're going to be growing food. And the way that I see it, my vision is for everyone. When we address the unhoused and the vulnerable community members, when they are taken care of, everyone's taken care of. When we can start there and we know that they are taken care of, the entire community is taken care of. My plan and my vision is for anyone who is gardening, anyone who has luscious gardens, anyone who wants to, is new into gardening, we can grow these luscious gardens and trade and have a market, like a farmer's market, but just like seriously straight across trading vegetables. Right? I know, I'm so excited for it. And, like if you want to, come and you have you want to make a couple bucks, cool. If you have some stuff you want to trade, cool. At the end of the season, We can do seed trading. Oh, I'm so excited. We could do seed trading. But we can also get that education out there as well. Like this, like we can do gardening workshops. And when I say this, it is with the unhoused community in the forefront. They already know what's being planned. They helped plant seeds to start seeds. Des, when was that, last weekend or the weekend before?
That was last weekend because I had the boys.
Yes. So they helped plant seeds. They're going to show me. It's kind of do and ask permission later. I'm not asking.
I believe we call it guerrilla gardening.
Yes. Or we've called it Operation Antifa or Plantifa.
Oh my, Plantifa. Plantifa is a t-shirt waiting to happen.
It's already a t-shirt. It's already a t-shirt.
Perfect.
I will buy one.
I'll have to send it to you. But it's the thing is these terms they're not co-opted. Anyone can use them. And you want to stick it on a t-shirt, go into Canva, make your own little Plantifa logo, go right ahead. Ask now and ask permission later. And you know what? When it explodes, which I envision it exploding, and other community members can really see that it's possible. I think that it will truly be leading by example. It's genuine. It's not forced. It's not Jehovah's Witnesses where you have to go door to door and you're like, please believe in this. Like, no, watch, we'll do it. If it resonates with you, you do it too. It's not going to harm anyone. Maybe cross-pollination, but we gotta still figure that part out. But it is, it's putting the education out there that we can be self-sufficient as a community if we want to. If we truly put the work in, we can do it and be self-sufficient as a community. But the education, that is such a big part, whether it be food scarcity, food insecurity, housing, harm reduction, safe consumption, police, abolishing the police. Like, it all comes down to education and putting the stats out there, like the correlation, the cause and effect. Even if we start working here at the bottom, down with the basics, this is how it will affect up here. And some people are very analytically minded. They, you have to put statistics and percentages and numbers out there for them to understand. Like, if we had sustainable housing for everyone, in the long run, this actually saves us money. In the long run, we end up building our community better. We have a stronger community, a better relationship, and I've thought of various ways of how we can do this, but just new and innovative ways, whether that's, I don't know about you, but when I see random QR codes, hopefully I don't get a virus one day on my phone. When I see random QR codes, I always scan it.
Always.
So, right. So that was one idea, like putting together stats and then putting up QR codes around the city, or making different brochures or having different rallies, community discussions, but really education based. I don't know how to word it properly, but also with the community members in the forefront, with those marginalized people that have been silenced in the forefront. We are amplifying them. They know what they need. And we are just there to push them and get them into spaces that they otherwise wouldn't be able to get into.
Yeah. And I think the really important thing about that vision that you have of how our community should and can and will operate, and I'm going to manifest that right now, it will operate like this, is I don't think it will take the onus away from the people who have let us down. I think, honestly, when our community sees how easy it was to make those little changes, it's going to be like, oh, are you kidding? They could have done this before. We could have had this for years, you know, like, we have a community garden here in Lloyd. The wait list is like almost 2-3 years. And it's expensive to get a garden plot. And if you don't have a backyard garden, there's nowhere else you can go to do this. And people,
it's far.
It is.
Like, it's far. Like, if you're living downtown, like, that walk is probably about 45 minutes.
Oh, I'd say even more than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very much an inaccessible thing. And so, it's just easy if we throw up some guerrilla gardens, plant trifa, all of a sudden, oh, hey, you don't have to worry about this waiting list. Now you've got fresh lettuce in your front yard. It's on we have so many grassy medians across town that have nothing on them except for litter because people just throw stuff around because it's not pretty. Well, let's make it pretty. Well, you're not going to wreck it now because it's beautiful, right? And I think that it'll just be a time of, as we're working through it, educating people and even just making people angry ourselves, handing out sandwiches and being like, isn't it ridiculous that, Shannon Stubbs is our MP and she didn't show up here and she's not handing out sandwiches? Super weird. Rosemary Falk, she's not here handing out any water to unhoused people. What are they doing? Why are we paying them $200,000 a year?
Once. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, the onus is on all of us, though. The onus is on all of us as members of this community to support our community, to support our community members and not, rely on structures and systems that we know don't work.
That are built off profit.
They are built off profit. They're built off systemic racism. And they have proven time and time again that it doesn't work. So,
well, I appreciate the work that you guys are doing to kind of disrupt and decolonize. We're kind of near the end of our time here, but I'm listening to you and I just keep thinking you folks need a commune in Lloyd, right? If I could have a magic wand, I know I'll fix all the problems of the world, yada, yada. But if I could do one little thing for you, it would be to give you a plot of space, a plot of land in your community with structure. And I can only imagine what you would do. And it may sound really silly, but I'm rewatching The Walking Dead. That's how I relax. Don't judge. So, and they get to start anew, right? And each one has its own style, and you do get to start again. And in this horrific post-apocalyptic, late-stage capitalism, zombie land. But that's how I envision your work, right?
That is honestly what we want to do. Like, LV is a part of another. It's part of another coalition, kind of called Turtle Island Mutual Aid Collective. And it's a group of, so there's LVE, Fight for Equity, Water Warriors, YYC, and Street Cats, I believe. So we're all under one mutual aid collective, and our goal is to win the lottery, collect enough monetary donations from either like grant funding or community members, and build a self-sufficient structure where we can have an outdoor garden, we can have an indoor garden, hydroponics, aquaponics, but also like, and this is, I don't know what type of year, like 10-year, 5-year, hopefully like 5-year, but we'll say 10-year goal of an all-encompassing space where we can have our drop-in center, we can have our shelters, like emergency shelters for men and women, but then also like the wet shelter part of it too. Everyone needs support no matter where, at what point they are. And a lot of the barriers that I have heard are, and have personally experienced, if you are under the influence of anything, you cannot get into a shelter.
So just to clarify for listeners, like a wet shelter is one that does not have restrictions on those experiencing addiction.
Yes, absolutely. And getting clean and sober on the streets is almost impossible. Like, I have there are people that do it, and I'm like, how? I had to move hours away from my old stomping grounds to get clean and sober, and I still relapsed here. So for you to be in the same small rural community, on the streets getting clean and sober, like, we should do that. Yes, good for you. But we do need a structure that does support like a wet shelter, a shelter where women and children can come regardless if they're fleeing domestic violence or not, because believe it or not, out here in Lloyd, we do not have that. We have one women's shelter, and you have to be fleeing domestic violence. Other than that, you have nowhere to go here. So that will also be a part of that. I know Tyler from Residents in Recovery, he has an awesome program for mothers and children. So instead of your children being taken away from you when you are receiving recovery support, you can now go into sober living with your children. And like, as a mom who had to get clean and sober without her children, and that is so hard. The amount of shame you feel as a mother having your kids taken away from you, it doesn't make it easier. It makes it worse. I truly believe that I went way farther down than I would have, because I didn't have my child with me. She was taken away from me. So it is a sense of shame. So another part of that all-encompassing structure is to have women and children in there to get clean and sober, and just like, cultural sensitivity, mental health training, just everything under one umbrella. And it sounds extravagant and grand, but I really do feel like it could come into fruition for sure.
How sad for us to have to reflect on that and think it sounds extravagant. And it does by today's standards, but is it? Right? Or is that what we deserve? Like, super kudos to you. Like, you talk about your struggles, and I've gone door to door too, and I've heard people who've had struggles, and you can go one of two ways, right? We see people that was like, if I struggled, everyone should struggle. What's the big deal? I'm here, but no, you said no one after me. You know what I mean? I cannot sit idly by while my community members struggle. So I know that you can't understand anyone operating any other way. Thank goodness for that. But there are. So I get so excited when we find people like you doing this work, especially in difficult circumstances, coming out of living in difficult circumstances like so many of us are. I mean, just surviving sometimes in this atmosphere is something to look up to, but you both have done so much more than that. So I do give you immense praise for that. And I'm sure a lot of listeners will. I want to end first, tell people how they can donate or contribute to what you're doing. Let's, take a minute here and drop some links or whatever you've got, and then you can provide that to me after, and I'll be sure to post it up when we post the episode. But how can people help you right now?
We have a couple different ways. So we do have a Facebook group, Lloydminster and Vermillion for Equity. It's a group, you have to join it. We have a Facebook page where anyone can join that. And then if you want to donate to us, we have an email where you can EMT us, Lloydminster Vermillion for Equity @gmail.com. We did have a website, but I messed it up somehow. So I will, if anyone knows how to build a website and can do it voluntarily, please let me know, because I messed it up.
I got you, girl.
Yes.
I was going to say, I've got a Slack channel that we can find somebody to help you with that. That is not a problem.
I don't know what the heck I did. Like, I got all the login information. I'm like, I'm going to fix this. And it was not the greatest. And then I ended up going to check it out. And it was like, this page cannot be found. And I was like, what?
Shame. That's the worst return, right? It's like, oh, yeah, man.
I'm like, oh shit. what did I do?
That's how we all of us teach each other, right? Like we just like trial and error, like bang our head against the wall.
What it was, trial and error.
Break it.
And I think that's how you can find us. I will send you all those links when we're done. We also do a monthly book club if anyone is interested. Yeah, it's our page is it's a group. It's LVE Book Club, and we read obviously books about anti-racism, but we read books from other BIPOC authors. We've read Robin Maynard's Policing Black Lives, Ibrahim Kendi, Stand From the Beginning, Clearing the Plains, but I can't remember the author of that book. That was such a good book. But yes, so if you want to join that, it's LVE Book Club on Facebook.
We'll make sure to get those links up and connected to the show as well. So on a parting thought, what I'm going to ask the both of you to do is just kind of briefly tell me what you're most proud of at this moment. It could be related to what we've talked about or not at all. But yeah, what success do you want to tell us about, or just what are you proud of? Share something really positive with us.
Wow, there's so many things. I think I've had a good, like I've been kind of sick the last little bit, so I'm trying to find all those little silver linings. I'll think of 3 off the top of my head. My Monstera gave me 2 babies recently, so now I now have 3 Monstera plants instead of 1. I got to see Tigra-Lee Campbell today, which is incredible. I love seeing her face. She's probably one of my favorite human beings. So that's really great. I also got to see Jessa McLean, which was really awesome. She's also really incredible. And I think what I'm most excited for is that it's almost springtime, which means that Tigra and I get to go do some Antrefa work. And I bought a bunch of seeds. I have a bunch of really awesome food seeds and wildflower seeds ready to go in little seed bombs. And we're going to completely make Lloydminster a beautiful place to live, probably for the first time in the 14 years that I've also lived here, because we moved here the same year.
I feel like I have to send you 2 seeds now. It's just, I know they don't cost a lot, but it just seems symbolic. So I've got a grow light over there. I'm a sprouter myself. I am surely, I need your mailing addresses, both of you, because I feel like if that's all I can contribute to your cause, and that's definitely,
Seeds of solidarity.
Because I'm excited about the
great.
guerrilla gardening. Like my hands need to be dirty all summer long. They already are. So
Seeds of Solidarity is now a t-shirt.
Yes. So good.
Jay is listening. Please write all this down. We have a whole t-shirt factory we have to start, apparently.
Yes. Seeds of Solidarity.
Tigra, you've got a lot to brag about as well. What are you most proud of right now?
Well, I am I'm so happy that I got to have this conversation today. I'm so appreciative of it. Thanks so much, Des, for including me. And I just love you so much. I have a really hard time talking about myself. I think a lot of people who've gone through trauma have the same outlook. I honestly am really proud of my recovery. If I didn't get clean and sober, then I wouldn't be where I am today. In January, I celebrated 6 years clean and sober from alcohol and methamphetamine. Yay. So I am, I'm sorry if you can hear them. That's my number one, proud moment. And I'm proud of my kids. I'm proud of the mom I am, and it's really hard. It's very hard work. And when you're neurodivergent, it's even harder. So I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of LVE. I'm proud of the work that we've done in the community. I'm proud of the relationships that we've built. I'm proud of the team and the support that we've created, and just having really awesome like-minded people that we can build off of, have a think tank with, have different low-key missions out there. We need to get this done, and they're always down to do it. So yeah, I'm very proud of the work that LVE's done, and yeah, I guess I really want to honestly thank the community, the vulnerable community and the unhoused community that we work with as well. We learn so much from them every week, and we really wouldn't know what to do, how to support them if they didn't start to develop that trust with us and really trust us to be open with us. So yeah.
Well, I thank you for the same reasons. Like, you came on here, both of you. I've learned a lot. I hope our listeners have learned a lot and take some inspiration that they can learn by your example, as your mission kind of states. So I'm glad that you had a laundry list of things to be proud of, because you sure do. You both do. I am so honored to be able to amplify that work. I will do my best to, do that beyond the podcast as well, because it's so critical. I'm so grateful that people are still willing to do that through their struggles, and capitalism has not got everybody down. There are so many fires burning across Canada in places you would maybe not even think of. So again, thank you, wonderful women, so much for coming on here, being vulnerable, sharing your highs and your lows, expressing your love for one another as comrades, is just absolutely beautiful way to start my weekend. So thank you again so much. I hope you enjoyed that discussion with Tigra-Lee and Des, and want to remind you to be sure to check out the work of Lloydminster Vermillion Equity Foundation. The community building that we heard discussed today and the importance of amplifying the voices of those most affected is what I'll take from me the most. Also, the incredible camaraderie between the two. I think that is important in terms of kind of getting through the work that they do. I hope it inspires you as well, the listeners, to hear how much can be done in a really tough political environment with very little resources and very little time. Of course, as you hear, that is only made possible by, finding genuine allies and comrades to share the workload, to push us to do better, and to really support each other. We heard a lot about burnout and how exhausting the work can be. If we all could just have comrades like Tigra-Lee and Des, just imagine the work that we could get done. I encourage you all to support each other in the way that they do and to keep working on. Thank you. Like in all things that we do, there's a team behind Blueprints of Disruption. I want to give a big thank you to our producers, Santiago, Hello Quintero, and Jay Woodruff. Our show is also made possible by the support of our listeners. Till next time, keep disrupting.